Okay. How about you, Pete?
Okay, well, I'm very glad to be here with all of you today, talking about something that I really am quite, I don't want to use the word passionate because it's not as much fun as all the things you all have been talking about as being passionate about, but I really do feel that this can be a big difference maker for an entrepreneur. I spend a lot of my time coaching entrepreneurs either individually or on boards of advisors or boards of directors, and this is an area that I find is often a place where people can really help themselves out quite a bit. We typically think of accounting and all of our financial records as something we do that allows us to look into the past, and that's important because it allows us to get a better idea of what's just happened to us. But the real value of having a financial system is its ability to help us predict the future and look into the future. From my standpoint, what I have found over the years is that I look at financial projections as having three purposes. One is aspirational. We all think about our strategic goals, our strategic dreams, but you have to be able to think about in more granularity than just in a broad goal. What does it mean to achieve those goals? And having a set of financial projections helps us to really kind of get down to the nuts and bolts of what is it like or what would it mean to achieve the things we want to achieve. Motivational is the part where once you've done that, you can start to plan out metrics of, well, if I can achieve this, I can be on the road to getting to where I want to go. And the third one is operational, that there are always unintended consequences to going down any road. And, if we in fact start to achieve our goals, other problems or other challenges or other resource needs come up. The sooner we can identify those, the more options we have about how to deal with them, whether it's we're going to need to raise more money, or we're going to need to hire certain kinds of people, or get more equipment, get more inventory, all of those things that are consequences of the goals we set out to achieve. In every case, the earlier we get visibility to those needs, the more options we have to address them. So for all of those reasons, I think it's a really important thing to gain a skill at using the numbers or the kind of the financial systems that we put together to help us glimpse into the future and to begin to plan for the future. Having said that, I'll shut up now and maybe see what might be interesting for all of you to talk about or what questions you all might have about this topic.
This is Bonnie. I guess I'll start with QuickBooks. I don't know if everybody's on that or not, but what tools, as far as like financial statements, et cetera, can you draw this information from, or is there a Excel spreadsheet or something that has to be made to help with the metrics and the projections?
Personally, what I have always done is to do it on an Excel spreadsheet,
okay.
And I'd be happy to share some models with people if that's helpful. But the reason why I always have gone to Excel myself is that I work with a lot of different people. Everybody has Excel, as opposed to working within a particular accounting software program that may or may not be as ubiquitous. And people tend to be able to visualize spreadsheets reasonably well, so that if they have it, they can then kind of take it offline and we can do things with it. One of my problems with trying to use projection systems that come in accounting systems is then people tend to be more just thinking about where do I plug this number in as opposed to understanding what they're doing with it. That's just my own personal thought about that. I'd be interested in whether other people have other thoughts about that.
Just as a follow-up to that question, is the templates that you have, are they like a pro forma, where you're projecting in 5 years, or is there other little variances in there?
Well, I typically have a template that just has a basic income statement, balance sheet, and then a cash flow statement just falls off the balance sheet. But basically that allows you to say, well, for example, if I'm going to turn over my inventory at a certain rate, you project on the inventory level, or how much you're going to have invested in accounts receivable or payables, given a level of sales, that kind of thing that allows you to say, well, what are my cash flow needs? It typically comes down to the cash flow consequences of growing a company at a certain rate, or of sales being cyclical or seasonal or that sort of thing. Just helping to predict, at the end of the day, the plug number or the outcome of all this tends to be cash. And so what does that mean for my cash? When am I going to be short on cash? When am I going to be able to pay it back? Those kinds of things. That's what I mostly use the spreadsheets for. Now, at a much broader level, when we start talking about strategy, we could talk about that. That might be a little bit different topic, but that's kind of thinking about what does a company look like if we start to if we want to be twice as big as we are now, for example, and just allow you to start to think about that. What would be different than the exact model we're currently working under today? But that's more scenario planning. I want to change subjects on you.
So this is Laura Lee. I'm actually curious, especially since most folks on the call have graduated in the past year or two. Did you develop your financial dashboards as part of the curriculum, and are you still using those?
This is Robin.
Question for the business owners. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. So I guess what I can say is that the three things in terms of dashboards that I use and had and actually developed and kind of standardized after the program were the income statement, the balance sheet, and also the what is it called? The break-even analysis. Those are the three. The cash flow, for whatever reason in our system, I can't get the numbers, and it just turned out being too much work to do, so it wasn't meaningful. But those are the three things that we use like regularly.
Cool.
This is Kim. I put together a scoreboard, and we look at it weekly, and it gives us a lot of information. I don't have it pulled up right now, but we rely on it heavily.
Great.
What kind of information is in there? This is Robin.
Well, let me pull it up and I'll tell you. We have a lot of specific information for us. How many quotes are created, how many are activated, the dollar value of those. We have the dollar value of our backlog, revenue month to date, current month revenue opportunity, accounts receivable, accounts payable, days sales outstanding, our checking account balance, and our line of credit balance. It's what we watch. And that's for our entire executive team. So obviously I watch more financial items more closely, but this is for our Chief Commercial Officer, our CEO, our Chief Scientific Officer, and myself. We watch this.
Right.
Laura, this is John. I took the course so long ago that I think the dashboard was written on stone tablets. And I need to pull that back. We have had an increase. Our income this year is a little over 10 times what it was last year.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, but it's hard to get our arms around it. Mind where materials our dashboard might be, if you can. I'd like to regenerate it. I took the course in 2008 and 9 when the economy was tubing, and our income tubed with it. We're in a very different situation now, but the tools ought to be much the same.
Great. And John, what's your business?
We are a law firm. We represent only federal agencies, and we've landed a couple of big ones.
So if I could just interject a question, was that the growth that you've seen anticipated, or has it been a bit above what you were expecting, or how has that played out?
Well, the answer is it was pretty much anticipated. The contract is with the Department of Justice. We started it 2.5 years ago, and it went through 6 protests. So the whole process took a long time, having gotten past the protest, we then had to bid the task orders. So it's not a surprise, but it is sort of interesting to get one's arms around.
Sure. One of the reasons for my question is that we all kind of love to talk about the possibility of seeing our sales grow or our business grow. With that, often you wind up saying, gee, be careful what you wish for, because often some problems crop up when things grow very quickly, which it sounds like you're dealing with now. And again, I think one really important purpose of the kind of things we're talking about is to allow you to do scenario planning such that you can be as prepared as you can be to still run the business as efficiently as possible and to manage growth so that it's a positive thing for your organization.
Well, and that's why I'm on this telephone call, sir.
Exactly. In your case, have you found you have to do things differently than you did before, or is it more a matter of just scaling up the way you did things before?
It's a whole different scenario with different contracts and with a fair-sized dose of subcontractors as well. So we have right now. I will tell you, we have added outside folks to do our HR. Outside folks to all of our stuff is in the security realm. Outside folks to do our recruiting. Outside folks to do our accounting. Outside folks to do a whole bunch of other things. We're about at the point to bring someone in and say, are we ready to bring them inside? We're basically running a $20 million contract with 3 people.
Wow. Well, that's a nice problem to have. I guess everybody else is saying at this point in time. One of the things, of course, you start to deal with is when rapid growth happens is just making sure you get through the day. But then the obvious thing next is, well, how can we most efficiently run the organization, getting through every day? And that sounds like that's what you're thinking about right now.
Well, it is, and pointing, the nice thing is that these are 2 biggest contracts are 7-year contracts. They run through September 30th of 2022. So we have some space to plan.
And right, the luxury of knowing that your planning is going to yield results for you, because you almost have visibility to the future, which very few of us have.
I think someone said, be careful what you wish for, you may get it. And
exactly.
I've had that thought.
One of the things that I have used a lot myself and advised other entrepreneurs I've worked with is this idea of scenario planning. If you say that, for example, I'm working right now with a company that I happen to be on a board of, that they have decided they want to double the size of their company in 7 years. And they've just based upon their growth potential they think exists, they would like to be twice the size. What we're trying to do is looking at their financial statements and kind of the ratios that exist in their financial statements, model what this company would look like with twice as many revenues. And you go from there and say, well, does that mean everybody buys twice as much stuff, or do you have more customers and do you have more products? And so we're working through that. Once you start to think about the number of new products they think they need to drive that growth, you start to talk about, well, do we have enough engineers designing products? And this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. We're at a level now of understanding that what they're really wishing upon themselves is a level of complexity for their organization well beyond what it is today. And so we can at least start to talk about what kinds of people resources do we need that we don't have in place if we're truly expect to be twice as big. In our case, we're making some very specific decisions in terms of growing the organization and the type of equipment that they're going to be committing to around making that goal a reality. But it also is having an impact on the organization that once people start to believe that that's really what's going to happen, I think people behave differently as well. And so that's another, just an example of how we use these systems to kind of drive where we want to take our business going forward. Is there anyone who has any other specific questions that we're able to help with today?
I guess this is Robin. I guess
Sure.
one specific question is and it relates to this line of discussion, is when you actually think about, you're doing a budget and it's a revenue budget, right? So you say, well, we did $1 million this year. Our growth rate has been 8%. I think we can do 10% next year. That's the top line, right? And this is the gross profit based on the product mix, et cetera. So this is what we're dealing with in terms of our gross profit. Then it comes time to actually project and budget the expense part, including headcount, including other things. And I'm just wondering, and obviously this has to do with scenario planning, but is there an easy formula or an easy way or an approach that you recommend or take, or a book or a guide or something like that? Just because I tend to do just kind of straight line as much as possible for the things that I know are going to stay the same, and the things that I know are going to go up, or I'll need more of, like I need more marketing to grow. But the other piece of it, in terms of the people piece, that's a little bit harder, especially because it's so incremental in my case.
You don't buy 5 hours of somebody's time.
Right.
You buy 40 hours of somebody's time.
That's it. You got it.
Yeah, exactly. If there was a good book, I would recommend it. Unfortunately, I don't know of one that I think is particularly good on this topic. But first of all, I think you need to take a step back, and if you're planning to, you say, well, I'd like to grow 10% next year. We're experiencing 8%. One reason to do that is because you don't want to lose ground to your competitors. But another reason to try to grow a little bit faster every year is because you believe there are efficiencies there. If we were putting more sales dollars through our business every year, there are places where we don't have to incrementally increase all of our expenses, and so more money could drop to the bottom line if we had more volume. If that is part of what you're thinking about, the first thing you should be doing is, okay, what are the things that could either hold the same or grow less fast than the top line in order to, because if our top line grows at 10%, our bottom line should grow at more than 10%. So where are the places that leverage is going to help us, and try to think about where those efficiencies are going. They don't just happen. How can we make sure that those efficiencies happen? But then you're right. There are places where you are going to have to spend more money, and you may have to spend it to get it. So you may have to spend it in anticipation of the dollars coming. So that's where you start to think about, well, if it's something like marketing, well, what or product development, so what are the things that have to happen for that to come? And there it's almost a case of you're spending money on faith. I believe that if I spend this money, I can generate more leads or more sales dollars or more customer interest. And then that's more a case of, can you afford to spend the money to take the risk to drive sales?
Right.
If it's the sort of thing of just based upon the additional volume that I need, I'm going to need more people to service that volume. I always look at it as you're probably going to have, you can't wait until the volume's here and then go find the person. So you're going to have to probably find the person ahead of time. So is there at least a metric that tells you you're on the track to generate the volume that's going to allow you to keep that person,
right,
and then bring the person on based upon that? So it looks to me if by March, my sales volume is here, then I believe for the rest of the year it's going to be high enough to afford the person. So I'm going to just pick a number and say that if I'm at this level, or once I achieve this level, or once my weekly volume gets to this level, then I'm going to take the plunge and invest in this person. It's a hard thing to do. There's no right answer, but it's sort of like you kind of get a feel for you're at a level where you can now afford that investment in the person. And it also differs based upon how close to the edge you're running your business, too. I mean, there's some people that just have no margin forever,
right,
and then you typically are playing catch-up. If you are fortunate enough to have enough margin in your business that you can be off by a couple of months by the right time to hire somebody, then you typically try to buy yourself that time and use that to maybe open up a search for somebody a little bit earlier.
Thank you.
if there was a set formula, we'd all be doing this stuff right. A lot of it winds up being just kind of gut, and unfortunately, that's what makes business interesting, I guess.
Pete, this is Bonnie again. So would you then advise, like what you're doing with the company that you're working with is to start with your financial statements and then do like kind of what if scenarios with those?
That's right. What we did in this case is we committed our financial statements to an Excel spreadsheet, and then we started playing with different lines on it.
Okay.
So if we look at it with the top line, say double what it is, well, one scenario could be that it just comes from doing everything just the way we are, twice as much. But there could also be that certain product lines grow, which have different margins to them and that sort of thing. And if it comes from new products versus more of the same products, that has consequences. And really what it does is it allows within the company to have conversations that if we're going to do this, you could point to the engineers and we're going to need for you guys to deliver X, Y, and Z by this time in order to make this number happen. And they could go back and say whether they have the resources or not to do that. Sales and marketing needs to deliver X, Y, and Z. It's a very healthy conversation because we all start to talk to each other about what we're depending upon each other for as well.
Okay.
And at the end of it, hopefully everybody feels that they've bought in to the goal of, as I said, we're at a stage now where everybody feels they own the goal of doubling the size of this company. Whereas probably 6 months ago, the CEO and maybe one or two other people believe they own that goal. And it's never going to deliver anything.
That's great.
Yeah, okay.
I actually, this is Laura Lee. I hear from a lot of business owners, that face challenges after going through this program. They have their growth plan, they have these goals, and thinking about ways to kind of translate that and share it and get buy-in from their team. And this sounds like a really great way to do that.
Well, in this particular case, they don't know it yet because I haven't told them what's next. But the next step for them is going to be, once we've kind of got this plan together, we're actually in the process of naming hires we're going to have to make and different plans, and we're going to particularly buy some equipment and things, is that each department or each group in the company is going to have two goals, no more than two goals for next year that are going to be instrumental in kind of the first year of our march towards doubling the company. And the company is going to have two goals, and each department or each group is going to have their own two goals to support those two goals, such that throughout everybody every morning walking to the company is going to know what's important for us to achieve next year if this is going to happen. And I really think when you start to get to that, that's where my motivational piece of this comes from. I think you really start to get that way. People start to feel ownership of that this is really something that's going to happen to our company, and we're going to be part of making it happen. I think that becomes really powerful. It's not just a slogan anymore.
That's fantastic. I'm actually curious, and I don't want to derail the conversation too much, but I'm curious for the business owners, when you were putting together your growth plans and establishing your growth goals, almost everybody has a revenue-related goal in there, or some kind of increase in sales or diversifying a product, something like that. Was there an awareness to tying your goals together, or was it really kind of establishing a goal, identifying the action items, and focusing on the individual goals? Or, were you really thinking about this sort of as a whole strategic plan and how those goals related to one another?
Oh, this is Bonnie. It's interesting that you said that because some of my goals I tied together, but there are others that are just kind of out there by themselves. And I don't know how that happened. I think we were just trying to reach a certain plateau of something, and so it just didn't really tie in, which it should have. But some of them were very well tied in together. So that's kind of interesting. I need to relook at them again.
Bonnie, if I could just ask you about that. The ones that are not tied in, is it because they were not supportive of the goal, but yet still important things to do anyway, or was it because you just didn't think about tying them back?
I think they were more short term.
Okay.
And yeah, and so the long-term goals are the ones that got tied in. And the short-term were like, oh, wow, we have this kind of fire that we need to put out, you know what I mean, like in the next 6 months or something. And so I think that's what happened, and they just got disassociated from everything else. Because, you know, we didn't look, like you were saying, you know, we didn't go over the numbers and say, okay, we're going to need this piece as we grow, you know, and it just kind of happened. And so you're like, uh-oh, now we got to do something. And so that's what happened.
Well, one point I wanted to make is that often when I work with entrepreneurs and we talk about tying our goals together, there's almost a sense of, well, if I can't tie this to the strategic goal, it doesn't belong on the sheet. There are these things I like to call hygiene goals. You know, it just was important for us to think about anyway, or was important for us to do anyway, or perhaps that even our lack of being better at this was becoming an obstacle to us moving forward anyhow. And there's nothing wrong with having some things that are like that at first glance you say, well, those don't support the overall goals, but you know what? You just had to pay some attention to getting them right or kind of getting them off the table anyway, and that's okay as long as you recognize that that's what you're doing.
Right, and yeah, and I, you know, this year it was a little bit better. You know, I don't see that many, but last year it was awful. You know, there were a lot of those, and I think because our market changes so much that we weren't prepared for some of the big market changes that were coming, and so they kind of caught us by surprise. And so I think that's, you know, what happened. Because we do a lot of online website stuff with other e-commerce places. So the criteria to get on an e-commerce site or the programs that you use to get on the e-commerce site are, I mean, like changing weekly. And, you know, if you're behind by about a year, you're not going to be on the marketplaces. I mean, that's it, period. So, and I think that caught us a little off guard. This year we're a little bit better prepared for that.
Now, do you look at your goal-setting process as an annual process, or how do you think about just the time frame around your goal-setting?
I do. I try to do something at the beginning of the year. I got a program called Goals on Track this year just to kind of help me out and look at some of, you know, kind of keep me up to date on everything. And then, like right now, we're going to have to add more goals. As you're saying, you know, we grew, and so now it's like we're looking at, you know, equipment and, you know, new equipment, a little new building, you know, hiring a person to do more of the shipping and the receiving and taking that off our hands. So, you know, now we're looking at, what are we, May? Okay, April. So, so we're adding goals now. You know, we still had those growth goals, but it grew bigger than what we thought it was going to be. So again, it caught us off by surprise. So that's why I'm on this call. Because I'm like, this can't happen. I need to know what's going on. So. Oh,
but it is important, you know, when you think about how fast-moving your business is, that you not be tied to, you know, necessarily any one form. So if we say you're going to have a set of annual goals, you shouldn't necessarily be locked into those goals for a year. I know of one company that halftime they took a look at how well they're progressing towards their annual goals, and they kind of do an assessment whether they're satisfied with that progress, but at the same time, at the halftime, they reprioritize their goals as well and say, is there something that should have been on there that's not on there, or the things that we could deprioritize that are on there? And so it's almost like every 6 months they're revisiting their goals for the year. Maybe in your case, maybe you might even want to do that quarterly. If you find things are happening so fast, you want to not be tied to just thinking it's an annual process. And it can be kind of a rolling process for you if quarterly is better than annually, if things are happening that quickly to you.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good idea. I mean, we're definitely going to have to change it. And, there's still some long-term big goals that don't change. Like, the trademarking was something that's kind of over everything, if you know what I mean. It's still going to be there. It doesn't really change. Getting into Europe and Brexit now, I guess, that's a goal that hasn't really changed. But, underneath that, all the infrastructure stuff has changed. So if that makes sense. Yeah. So there's kind of this really pie-in-the-sky one, and then there's all these other little pieces underneath. And, last year it really caught us by surprise. It really did. I guess I just didn't realize the market moved that fast. We're in.
Well, the other thing you mentioned Brexit. Things can happen very quickly, even around something like that. And you shouldn't feel that your goal setting system precludes you from being opportunistic. If an opportunity arrives and you need to jump on it, don't feel bound by your goal setting system not to do the most entrepreneurial thing you could be doing right now.
Right. And Brexit, that kind of shifted a lot of our stuff because manufacturing we have that we deal with manufacturers in different countries over there. So kind of shifted, just everything.
Probably will continue to shift.
Money. I don't even know what currency we're using here. So, yeah, that was
a great example of that sort of thing where no one knows what you're getting into.
Exactly.
So flexibility is critical. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of our vendors didn't know. They still don't know. They're just like, okay, we're just kind of going along. And, and that's all they can do until the rules are set down, because nobody knows what the rules are right now.
No, that's a great point around this issue of, how often you want to be revisiting your goals or how flexible you want to be. You have to be reactive to what's happening in the marketplace.
Right.
Everybody's business is different, but at a period of time when things are changing rapidly, you want to be looking at your goals on a more frequent basis, recognizing the fact that things are not going to look exactly the way they did when I sat down and did this the first time.
Right, exactly. Very good point. Oh.
I think we may have had one other person join a little after we started, and somebody in New York maybe? I just want to make sure that you have a chance to introduce yourself and ask a question too.
Pete, this is John again. I'm sorry if I'm monopolizing too much of the conversation, but I've got what I trust will be a fairly quick issue. And it has to do with accounting systems. We use QuickBooks, and QuickBooks is comfortable producing accrual statements and less comfortable producing cash statements, and there's a disparity every month between those. My question is accrual versus cash, what do we trust? And secondly, at what point do we go outside for somebody like Deltek to do our accounting?
Well, first of all, I'm a CPA. With my former life, I used to do that for a living. So, accrual accounting is really just trying to recognize the fact that cash flow misses a lot of economic transactions, that somebody owes me money or I owe somebody money and that sort of thing. The accrual numbers should be the more accurate numbers from an economic standpoint if they're done properly. And again, we talked earlier about using Excel spreadsheets. Personally, I always use the accrual numbers as sort of the Bible. If I want to run cash numbers, I just do that on a spreadsheet separately. because I find that just easy to do and it's easy to show people to do. But in terms of bringing an outside person in, who does the actual bookkeeping for you now?
One of our three folks who also handles HR and recruiting and security matters and a bunch of other stuff, and she's very good, but I'm worried about overtaxing her. We do have.
I was just going to say that the typical reason I see people bringing somebody in is one of two things. Either the person is not good. Fortunately, you don't have that problem to deal with. The other one is just that they have better things to do. You know, if this person is really good at the HR side and has a lot of things on her plate, having somebody who could be much more efficient because it's what they do all the time, that can free her up is usually the decision that most people get to when they start to bring somebody else in to do it.
We have used our outside CPA firm, and they are a great safety net under everything else, but it's not an inexpensive safety net. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they could certainly get it done, but there are probably more cost-effective ways to get it done as well.
Good, thank you. Your accrual observation is very helpful to me. I guess I'm more interested in cash, but
sure. But again, the accrual statement should be helpful and predictive about what's actually should be happening with cash, right?
Good. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else that I can talk about or tell stories about today?
If we want to get a hold of you in the future to assist, is there a way to do that, or are you open to that?
Sure, I'm more than happy to try to help. I give free advice and you get what you pay for. No, I'm more than happy to help. Laura Lee, you have probably the easiest way to reach everyone. Just feel free to post my email address. I'm happy to answer any questions offline or provide additional insight if it would be helpful to people.
Great. Yeah, if you're up for that, I'm sure that people would love to be able to, continue the conversation and ask any other questions that may come up.
I've got no life.
Accept it.
No, seriously, I enjoy doing this kind of thing, and it's what I do. So I'm more than happy to help if I can be helpful to anybody.
Very cool. Yeah. Being so familiar with with our curriculum and with our business owners and seeing some common challenges, are there any sort of general words of advice or certain best practices that you can kind of leave people with or share?
Boy, they could put me on the spot to say something that makes sense. I guess to my mind, it may sound trite, but I continually try to remind entrepreneurs to remember why you're doing this in the first place. In other words, what outcome would you really like to have come from working as hard as you are with your business and trying to build a business? It's not always just about growing the sales line. The bottom line could be more important than the top line sometimes. It could be whether you're trying to build a business to a level that it helps you achieve a lifestyle for yourself, but never forget what it is that you hope to have come out of this, and let that drive a lot of the other decisions you're making. Because I talk to so many entrepreneurs that work very hard at their business towards what's best for the business and not what's best for them, and I think that sometimes can be a mistake. If you've got a venture-backed business and you think you've got $1 billion opportunity, well, let the business drive you. But for most of us, think about where the business can take me and then how am I going to make sure the business does that for me as opposed to you working for the business. And I just see entrepreneurs all the time acting as though they had no choice about that matter. And the numbers sometimes help you at least get clarity about that issue. Does that make sense to anybody there?
Yes. How do we do that?
How do we do that?
Oh, good. I was hoping that
That's a different topic altogether. Probably where we should start every topic, right? Every
this would be part of that topic.
Start
actually.
with that, right? Yeah.
That's great. I think that's really helpful. And even if that is something that people know, that people have heard, I don't think it hurts to constantly have reminders. All right. Well, if you all feel like you are good and saturated with with knowledge and conversation at the moment, then we can wrap up. And I will share Pete's email so that you can follow up with him. And like I've said, if there's anything else that you need in terms of support, resources, connections, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pete, thank you so much. This was a fantastic conversation.
Well, my pleasure, and thanks for setting up Orly.
Absolutely. All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Hey.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.